Do you desire to stay on fire? If yes, you must pray constantly. Welcome to today's edition of Insight with Ezekiel as we continue to make progress with the series we started yesterday on how to stay on fire. How to stay on fire. Like I said from the beginning, that anyone who desires to stay on fire must pray constantly. In Leviticus chapter 6 verse 12 and verse 13, the Bible says that the fire on the altar shall be ever burning, and this fire shall not go down. This fire shall not be put out. But if this will be the reality, then the priests have a responsibility. You see that in verse 13, to burn wood on the altar every morning. In other words, the fire will not just be burning by default. If the fire is going to continue to burn, then the priests have a responsibility. It's the same way. You will not stay on fire by default. If you are going to stay on fire for as long as you live, then you must do certain things, and one of them is that you must pray constantly. If you desire to stay on fire, if I desire to stay on fire for as long as I live, then I must pray constantly. In Luke chapter 18 verse 1, Jesus himself said, men, human beings, ought always to pray and not to faint. In other words, the believer that will stay on fire is the believer that prays as a lifestyle. The believer that will stay on fire is one that prays constantly. This is so important that we must pray. We must pray. We must pray. If we desire to stay on fire, then prayer must become our lifestyle. We must pray when it is convenient. We must pray when it is not convenient. We must pray when there is cold. We must pray when there is heat. We must pray when things are going fine. We must pray when things are not going fine. We must pray. We must pray. We must pray. The believer that will stay on fire is the believer that prays constantly. And this is my encouragement to you. This is my encouragement to us, that if we desire to stay on fire, then we cannot afford to take prayers casually. If we desire to stay on fire, then we cannot afford to take prayers with levity. In Acts chapter 6 verse 4, the foundational apostle said something very profound. They said, but we will give ourselves continually to prayer. It's like saying, hey, we will donate ourselves to prayer. We must pray. And this is how they stayed on fire. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 17, the Bible says, pray without ceasing. The believer that will stay on fire is the believer that prays constantly, that prays continuously, that prays consistently. Show me a believer who has stayed on fire for a long period of time, and I will show you a believer who prays constantly. Have an amazing day. See you tomorrow. Thank you.